Hello, everybody. How are you? Today, I want to talk about my three favorite words from A Tale of Two Cities. Uh, Tale of Two Cities, written by Charles Dickens, and Charles Dickens definitely is one of my favorite writers. I like Charles Dickens simply because he is a really good storyteller. He's born in around early 1800 years, so his language is quite old. So at the first glance, it's quite difficult to understand Charles Dickens' language because it's a little bit different with the modern English. And additionally, Charles Dickens uses a lot of metaphor, irony, and literary technique. So it takes practice to read and understand Charles Dickens' language. But once you learn how to read Charles Dickens, you really come to like his writing. So Charles Dickens is one of my favorite, and I want to talk about A Tale of Two Cities today. And The Tale of Two Cities is a story occurred in both London and Paris. So according to the book, the background year was year 1775. And in order to talk about the City of Two Tales, I need to explain the background of the story first. So in year 1775, both England and France, they adopted a system of monarch, which means that both countries, England and France, they were ruled by a king. And there is a little difference between France and England. England was called a constitutional monarch, which means that although the country is run by a king, the king at least tried to abide by the law. When he make decision, the king George III, when he tried to make decision, he considered to abide by the law, constitution. At the same time, France adopted absolute monarch, which means that the king decide everything. There is only a weak conception of constitutional law. King make all the decisions. So in England, they have relatively stable system. Society was relatively stable because the king tried to rule the society, like based on the constitution and law. However, in France, I guess French king made subjective decision all the time. So people were quite not happy, not satisfied in the society of France at the time. And it seems that there are really rigid and strict social hierarchy class in France. There were three estates. There were first estate, second estate, and third estate. Normally, the first estate are the monarch people, royal families, which enjoys a privilege and power and economy. And the second estate is a clergyman, like priest, religious leaders. They are in the second class, also enjoyed power and privilege. And the problem is the first and second estate, only handful of the proportion in society. Majority of people, like 97 or 98% of society, belong to the third estate, which are the common people. And it seems that upon reading Charles Dickens' City of Two Tales, it described the French society of that time is really poor, and people were not satisfied with the system, and a lot of disease and not much a social protection, and social welfare systems did not exist in society of France. So there was a grooming phenomenon of a French Revolution. So year 1775 was time of chaos in France, and both for France and England. And Charles Dickens intentionally set the historical background in 1775, maybe because Charles Dickens wants to warn the British people that if the leaders are not doing a good job managing and governing the society, there could be a revolution, and it could lead sacrifice of a lot of innocent people, and it could lead a social chaos. So maybe by writing A Tale of Two Cities, Charles Dickens wants to tell the story to British people, to British leaders, about managing the society reasonably and make citizens satisfied. And so the first word, the first vocabulary I want to introduce today related to Tale of Two Cities is dichotomy. Dichotomy, it means the way of thinking that clearly distinguish between right or wrong. In the system of dichotomy, you only have binary values. So there's a clear line exists between right and wrong, or between black and white. So in the story, there exists a dichotomy which explains what is right thing to do, what is wrong thing to do. And in nowadays, there is so much gray area. There is so much unclear distinction between so much values. So the reason why I like Charles Dickens is because of a dichotomy. He knows what is right thing to do and what is wrong thing to do. So by writing a story, by writing a novel, Charles Dickens tried to educate people. So I like Charles Dickens because of that reason. He suggests what is right thing to do in society, and he believed that one of the great way of educating and teaching people is throughout story and novel. So whenever I read the Charles Dickens story, I can learn about what is right thing to do very clearly. And at the end of the story, most of the times, good people, they have a happy ending, and bad and evil people, they many times face their own ending, which deserve bad and evil behavior. So it gives a clear moral lesson, moral guideline, and the dichotomy is the reason why I like Charles Dickens, and dichotomy is the reason why I like the story, A Tale of Two Cities. And also the second word I want to introduce is plead and acquit. So to plead is a verb. So to plead means to strongly argue for something. So plead usually is used in the court, in the lawyer vocabulary. Say a prosecutor plead him a not guilty. It means that a certain prosecutor, he argues that a person is not guilty. In that way, you can say prosecutor plead him not guilty. Or you can say in opposite way, a prosecutor plead him guilty. So the prosecutor believes that a person committed crime, and the prosecutor hold a strong evidence which prove the commitment of crime of that person. In that case, prosecutor can plead him guilty. Also there is a word like acquit. Acquit is a verb. So to acquit, it means you free someone from being guiltiness. In other words, if a judge acquits Charles, it means that judge says that Charles is not guilty. Charles is free from crime anymore. Charles did not commit any kind of crime. In that case, you can say judge acquit Charles. It means acquit means free someone from guiltiness. So in the story of A Tale of Two Cities, we have a character named Charles Darnay. Charles Darnay is a French person, and he is quite righteous, and he is very kind, nice person. So he falls in love with a Lucy Manet, one of the main character of A Tale of Two Cities. And unfortunately, Charles Dane, he was accused of a crime. He was accused of espionage, which means that Charles Dickens Charles Dane, he is believed to commit a spy on French government. So one day he got caught in a court. So he was getting a trial. Charles Dane was getting trial on the action of espionage and spy. And there is another British lawyer called Sidney Carton. And Sidney Carton saves and helps Charles Dane. And because of Sidney Carton, Charles Dane is being acquitted by the law, by the court. And Sidney Carton argues, Sidney Carton and Charles Dane, they look very similar. They look almost like twins. They look identical. And when Charles Dane is accused of committing espionage and spy, Sidney Carton, he tried to persuade the judge. And he tried to say that, look at Charles Dane and look at me, and you guys might realize that we look almost identical. So it's totally possible that the witness who argues that Charles Dane committed the spy, he might made the mistake of considering someone else as Charles Dane, because it's very common that two similar identical looking people exist everywhere. So just because a witness believed Charles Dane committed spy without any evidence, we cannot say Charles Dane committed a espionage and spy. And the court accepted the plea of Sidney Carton, and the court acquits Charles Dane. So now Charles Dane is getting free from his suspicion of espionage. So the plead and acquit are the second word I want to introduce. And also the third word I want to introduce is turn at bay. So turn at bay is a phrase. It explains the phenomenon of desperation. So let's say that a turn at bay, it originates from the hunting. So Bay Area is like near this ocean, near the seashore area, where the land ends and the ocean begins at the point. It is the area of bay. So let's say that you are hunting a mouse, you're hunting a deer, and deer, you hunt and chase deer to the end of the land, and the deer is facing the ocean. The deer arrive at the end. The deer arrive at the bay, and the deer realize that there's no way to run away anymore. And because of the deer feels a desperation, suddenly deer might give up running away. Instead, he turns toward you and tries to attack you, because deer becomes so desperate, there is no way to go, and the deer feels turn at bay and it starts attack the hunters. So when you hunting the weak to a desperate situation, the weak suddenly will turn back and will try to attack you instead of running away. So here in the situation of Tale of Two Cities, these French people, they are suffering a very painful and hunger time, and there is no social welfare system, and a lot of disease, and they are getting abused. And matter of fact, in that time, 1775, a lot of people get executed. If the loyal people or if high society people, they don't like people, citizens, they can just kill them by cutting their heads off. So society was really unstable, and these weak ordinary citizens, they were thinking about a revolution. They were unhappy, unsatisfied. So Charles Darwin warns that there could be a turn at bay if you drive these normal, ordinary citizens to a desperate situation. These people, they might become so desperate, and they will try to attack the government. They will try to become aggressive. So Darwin warns the possibility of the phenomenon of turn at bay. So overall, Charles Dickens really wrote an interesting story, and I strongly recommend you to read A Tale of Two Cities. And it's very classic and it's fun to read. Okay? Again, thank you for watching and see you next time. Thank you. Bye.